When the world settles into slumber, that quiet hum takes over. And for most of us, well, that's the signal to turn out the lights. But for a specific segment of our society, a different reality awakens. They work through the darkest hours. Tonight, we're doing a deep dive into what happens really to our minds and our perception when we're awake while the world sleeps. We've got a stack of true accounts from people whose night shifts became, canvases for their most terrifying experiences.
Exactly. And these aren't just, spooky anecdotes. They're almost like case studies. They really shine a light on how isolation, maybe messed up sleep cycles, the quiet of the night, how it all influences our perception, amplifies anxiety, sometimes puts us face to face with things that really blur the lines between, I guess, the mundane and the deeply disturbing.
That's our mission for this deep dive. And our first story just throws us right into that feeling of vulnerability, being alone on a journey home. Deep in the English countryside. Okay, so picture this. A university student. He's working late shifts at a pub near Leeds. He finishes up at around midnight, and he's got this 2.5-mile walk ahead of him along these narrow, poorly lit country lanes. He's a student, right? So he's saving his tips, pretty good tips from country pub folks instead of grabbing a taxi. Feeling good, he'd just made 112 pounds, more cash than he'd ever had. So he's about a mile into this walk, and a car passes him slowly. He doesn't think much of it at first, figures maybe it's someone lost from a local festival, but then it stops, like 200 yards ahead, in the dark, sits there for a minute and drives off. He says he got this immediate bad feeling, that knot in your stomach. Not totally freaked out yet, maybe the beer helped a bit, but he just knew something wasn't right.
Yeah, that's fascinating, that immediate sense of dread. It's like our brains have this built-in threat detector, especially when we're alone, vulnerable. It's often the subconscious picking up on tiny cues, a primal warning system.
And it was spot on. A couple of minutes later, the same car shows up again, this time coming from the other direction. And again, it stops a few hundred yards ahead.
Yeah.
But this time, it does a U-turn right there in the lane, switches off its headlights, and starts to slowly creep down the road towards him.
Oh no, headlights off.
Headlights off. Pitch black. He is utterly terrified. Mind-racing robbery, kidnapping, worse. He just bolts, scrambles over a dry stone wall into a field, scrapes up his elbows pretty bad. He thinks about calling the police, but then realizes, the phone screen light would give him away. So he shoves it back in his bag, decides hiding is the only option. Crouching in a hedge, just listening in the total darkness. And then he hears it. Not one car door slam, but 2 or 3 doors slamming at the same time. They hadn't driven off. They were waiting. He realized he was being hunted by strangers.
Wow. That realization must have been pure ice in his veins.
Absolutely. He runs again, just tearing across this dark field towards some woods he knows. Hides out for a bit, then finally makes a break for it in the opposite direction, sticking to fields, avoiding roads, gets home, wakes up his parents, reports the whole thing to the police. About a month later, police call back. They'd arrested the gang. Turns out they'd assaulted an elderly man a few villages over. He was a local gang from Leeds, driving out to the countryside for initiation rituals.
That is just chilling. It really underscores that often the most terrifying things aren't ghosts, but other people. And the psychological impact, knowing you were just randomly targeted like that, it changes how you see the world, your sense of safety, especially after being so isolated and vulnerable.
Yeah, it's a profound kind of fear. Okay, let's shift gears. From dark lanes to a different kind of night shift unease. This one's set in the secure unit of a nursing home in Massachusetts. Think about it. Locked in, alone with patients who might be at risk. Dimly lit halls, super quiet. It creates this specific kind of atmosphere. So this nurse, her first weird experience there, it's late, maybe 2 or 3 a.m., dead quiet. And suddenly, this playful voice echoes down the hall. "I can see you." Instantly puts her on edge. She checks everyone's asleep. Then the voice says it again. She described it as even creepier this time. She was shaking, just completely gripped by fear for the rest of the shift. Later, she gets what seems like a rational explanation. Another nurse tells her about a patient who had recently passed away. He used to play this game with his granddaughter, saying, "I can see you," in a sing-song voice. And they eventually figured out another patient who must have overheard this game many times was talking in their sleep.
It's interesting, though, even with that logical answer, the initial fear can stick with you. Especially in a place like that, so connected to illness and endings. Your mind can play tricks. Auditory pareidolia, hearing familiar sounds and random noise, or maybe even hypnagogic stuff. Those vivid, dreamlike things as you drift off or wake up. Night shift work definitely makes you prone to that.
Yeah, the mind trying to make sense of things. But then, the next story from this same nurse gets stranger. She talks about 2 patients. One was this really sweet old lady, her neighbor though. described as vile and spiteful. So the sweet old lady passes away peacefully, sad but calm. But then the mean neighbor, her behavior totally changes. She becomes terrified, refuses to sleep in her bed, begs for the lights to stay on, and one night she somehow gets all the way out into the hall without her wheelchair. Staff had never seen her walk unaided. She's breathless, just pure fear in her eyes.
That's a drastic change.
Huge. And the unspoken feeling among the staff. The mean neighbor was terrified. The sweet old lady she'd presumably tormented was coming back for her.
You have to wonder about the power of guilt there, right? Or maybe just intense fear in that specific environment. Could her own past actions, combined with being in a place so close to death, manifest that powerfully? Psychologically, intense guilt can absolutely lead to projections, feeling like you're being visited, even if, objectively, nothing's happening.
It's a heavy thought. And the last one from this nurse is maybe the most ambiguous.
Yeah.
It was a Greek grandmother, first-generation immigrant, spoke very little English, and she'd talk loudly to herself at night, constantly. The nurse got curious, asked the woman's son, "Why does your mother talk to herself so much at night?"
Yeah.
That's his mother. And she apparently gives him this look, like, what a silly question, and says simply, "The man in my room." Except she was in a room where there were absolutely no men.
Right, and that splits opinions, doesn't it? Some staff might say early dementia, hallucinations, which is plausible. Others, though, working in these places, they sometimes feel there's just something else. That threshold between life and death. Maybe some things aren't easily explained by clinical terms alone. It challenges our neat categories of reality.
It really does. Okay, let's move to a completely different setting. An animal shelter, overnight shifts. The person telling this story actually found the work fulfilling. Alone in this horseshoe-shaped building, checking animals, taking calls. Though there was the sad part, the euthanasia policy for dogs involved in fighting, or feral cats. So it's just past 3 a.m., one quiet fall night. Suddenly, a woman sprints to the entrance, banging on the door, buzzing, crying, tears all over her face. No animal with her, just desperately needs to come inside. She eventually calms down enough to explain she'd had her cat euthanized earlier that day, and now she wants the body back for a proper burial.
Okay, that's immediately unusual and very emotionally charged. It puts the staff member in a really difficult position, way outside the norm.
Totally. And the protagonist felt she had to help this distraught woman. But the task, it was grim. She had to go down to the basement, to this walk-in freezer. The bodies were kept in these large blue plastic drums. She describes this sickly smell of decay, even though they were frozen because so many were just thrown in together. Had to sift through them all. She finally finds the cat, but discovers it's frozen solid to another dead cat. She actually had to, well, she described it as peel them from one another with a horrific snapping sound. Said it tore away a huge portion of the cat's frozen flesh. She almost threw up. Gives the damaged body back to the woman, who bizarrely seems happy enough. He even tries to hug her. But the protagonist just left feeling disgusted, revolted, and wondering, what did that woman actually want with the bone?
Yeah, that really drives home the point that some horrors are entirely human, not supernatural. The psychological impact of doing something like that, feeling morally compromised, plus the sheer weirdness and ambiguity of the woman's behavior, that can leave a much deeper scar than seeing a ghost. It's a unique kind of night shift trauma.
Absolutely. Okay, shifting again. Night shift security. This person says their biggest fear wasn't ghosts, it was always people. He's a contractor, often trains new hires alone in empty factories, malls, overnight. Say he never saw anything supernatural, but plenty of disturbing people. So he gets a call. Train a new guy, Pate. Meet him at a factory complex, 5 a.m. Keep pulls up, driving erratically. And the guy looks rough, like a coal miner, the storyteller says. Mid-30s, but looks 50. Has this awful crusty rash on his face, neck, arms, missing 2 fingers, voice like gravel. And there are 2 little kids in the back seat. One has a deformed face. Pete just barks at them, "Get back in the car."
Wow. Just the description sets off alarm bells. That immediate visceral reaction. Our brains are pattern matching machines, right? Picking up on danger cues. His appearance, the erratic driving, the way he treats his kids. It's a powerful, intuitive warning.
Exactly. And it just gets worse during the tour. Pete starts asking really inappropriate questions, like asking the protagonist if he was screwing any of the girls at the factory, asking if he could hunt on the grounds. And he seemed to get way too much enjoyment out of stories about violent incidents the protagonist had dealt with before. The protagonist is just thinking, this guy's a serious risk. Immediately calls his boss, tells him how weird, how sketchy Pete is. But the boss, he's dead set on giving the guy the job, actually yells at the protagonist for questioning him.
That's incredibly frustrating and dangerous, dismissing that strong gut feeling.
Totally. So the protagonist, he feels he has no choice. He tells his boss, "I refuse to work with him again." Endly. After a long argument, the boss finally gives in, transfers him to another site. But even 2 years later, he says that encounter still bothers him. He wonders about Pete's kids. Are they doomed to live the same bizarre life as their father?
That's a really haunting thought. The potential for cyclical patterns of behavior, of horror, really.
Yeah.
And it shows how hard it can be to act on intuition, that gut feeling, when there's no concrete proof. The burden on the person who sees the danger but isn't heard.
Heavy stuff. Okay, next up, we're going to a massive U.S. Air Force ordnance storage facility in Germany. Huge place, heavily forested underground bunkers packed with thousands of bombs. Our storyteller worked there as an ammunition systems tech. One night, routine gets messed up. They missed an evening security check, so he and a buddy have to go out and do it at 1 a.m. Middle of their patrol, truck breaks down. Utter darkness. Radios. Dead.
Okay, that's already a bad situation. Secure military site, pitch black, no communication, middle of the night. Anxiety levels must be sky high. The brain's already on high alert.
Definitely. Annoyed, they decide to walk back. But instead of the road, they take a shortcut through the dense woods. Bad idea. It leads them past these old World War II-era brick structures, bunkers. And they see it. The bunker doors where they stored cheap aerial bombs is wide open. This is a major security breach, serious trouble, prison time serious. Radio's still out. They feel they have to check it themselves. Go inside. It smells like wet concrete and mildew. Rows and rows of bombs. Seems clear. They start to leave. And as they're stepping out, they hear the most blood-curdling howl I've ever heard in my life. Coming from inside the bunker they just checked. Hearts pounding, pure panic. They just run, crashing through the woods, find cover, draw their sidearms. Eventually they work up the nerve, run back, slam the huge bunker door shut, bolt it, think, okay, crisis over. But then, maybe half a mile from the barracks, another howl, just gut-twisting, echoing through the trees. They freeze. Then, movement in the bushes, and they see glowing yellow eyes emerging from the dark. Then more eyes, and more. Eyes everywhere surrounding them. They're absolutely terrified, can't even breathe.
Oh my God. Surrounded.
Paralyzed by fear until the threat reveals itself. It was just a herd of deer, startled from their sleeping spots, their eyes reflecting the minimal light. Incredible relief. And the howls. Turns out some German teenagers had broken in earlier, found the bombs, freaked out, and ran screaming, leaving the door open.
Wow. That's a perfect storm of misinterpretation. The security breach, the isolation, the darkness, the actual howls, it primed their minds for terror. Their brains were expecting danger, so they interpreted the deer, something totally normal, as this horrifying, encircling threat. It shows how powerfully context and fear can warp perception.
It really does. Okay, let's bring it somewhere more familiar, maybe. A supermarket night shift. Our storyteller is a teenager, stocking shelves. Says he usually liked the quiet, being a night owl. One morning, near the end of his shift, he sees an older man, kind of in a poorly fitted suit. They exchange good mornings. He just assumes, maybe a regional manager doing an early visit. But when his actual morning manager arrives, she's totally confused by his story, says no one was expected. She even jokes like, "Are you pranking me?"
Right, that's where the mundane starts to feel off. When simple facts don't line up, it creates that little crack in your reality, makes you question your own memory, especially during those weird, quiet night hours.
Exactly. The manager gets serious, though. They decide to check the store's CCTV. It's pretty advanced stuff. First camera angle they check. Just shows the teenager walking alone in the aisle. He starts thinking, okay, did I imagine that? But then they switch angles, and they see it. A shadowy figure moving way in the back, weaving through clothing racks. You can even see clothes shifting on the hangers. So he feels vindicated, but also this creeping dread. Because the really weird part, the figure on the camera moves really fast and low to the ground. He described it as almost like he was running on all fours like an animal, which completely contradicts his memory of this older, kind of frail man he thought he saw. They check the entrance cameras, nothing. No footage of this figure entering or leaving. The horrifying thought hits them. The visitor might still be in the store, hiding somewhere. Manager calls the police, gets all the staff into the lounge for safety. Police show up, look at the footage. But it just gets weirder. The officer's confused, asks if maybe it was a stray dog, starts questioning the camera quality, even though it's brand new, because the figure is so blurred and distorted. They search the entire store thoroughly. Nothing. No sign of forced entry, no exit footage. The figure just wasn't there anymore. Vanished.
And that leaves you with such profound unease. The ambiguity is the terrifying part. Was it a person, an animal, a glitch? The footage itself adds to the mystery by being distorted, not quite human. Our brains hate that kind of unresolved anomaly, especially when it happens in a familiar place, but defies explanation. It leaves that lingering feeling of an unseen presence.
Definitely lingers. Okay, our final story tonight. A very modern, very relatable fear. Working alone at a gas station late at night, our protagonist is doing the usual cleaning chores with his coworker. Store's quiet, almost 10 p.m. He turns around to wipe down the glass doors and boo, instant terror. There's a tall man standing right outside, sweater, beanie, and a black face mask. His first thought, immediate and frantic, robbery. This is it, heart-pounding, fumbling for the keys to lock the door, but the guy's too quick. He's already inside. The protagonist just braces for whatever's coming.
Yeah, that's pure immediate threat assessment. Masked person, gas station, late night. The context screams danger. That fight or flight response kicks in instantly. It's a known high-risk job. That constant low-level vigilance suddenly spikes.
But then, this surprising twist, almost anticlimactic, really. The man just pulls down his mask, shows his face, and asks where the restrooms are. Pulls the mask back up as he walks past the coworker who's equally stunned. After the guy leaves, things calm down a bit. But then the protagonist remembers something. Earlier that evening, he'd seen a man who looked a lot like the masked man, just sort of peering through the station windows. So now the unsettling questions start. Was he casing the place? Did seeing the protagonist's coworker, who happens to be 6'8" and 200 pounds, make him change his mind about whatever he might have been planning? It's a very practical fear now. He mentions a gas station in the same chain got robbed just last year. He's absolutely decided he's carrying extra protective measures on his next night shift.
And that really captures the psychological toll, doesn't it? That constant vigilance. Every stranger, every unusual event could be a threat. Your mind replays it, runs through the what ifs.
Yeah.
It's a survival mechanism, that hypervigilance, but living with it constantly creates chronic stress. It shows the mental burden on people who work those vulnerable hours.
It really does. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we've really journeyed through quite a spectrum of night shift experiences, haven't we? From clear human threats and maybe the echoes of guilt to things that are just truly inexplicable. But we've also seen how basic things, isolation, being tired, the sheer quiet can mess with our heads, amplify fear, make the ordinary seem terrifying.
Exactly. The common thread seems to be that when our usual daytime world fades, our more primal instincts, our subconscious fears, they kind of take the wheel. The night isn't just a time for external dangers. It's also when our internal landscapes, our own anxieties and interpretations come out to play. It makes you wonder. When everything goes quiet, what psychological processes, what fears we don't acknowledge in the daylight are really lurking there in the shadows, waiting for those who have to keep watch.
It's a chilling thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the night's truths and how our minds react to them. If these stories and insights gave you something to think about, maybe sent a chill down your spine, please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel, The Deep Dive. We appreciate the support. We'll be back with another deep dive soon. Until then, good night and sleep tight if you can.